Lemonada.
Hello and welcome to This Life of Mine, the show where our guests pick the places, people, possessions, music and memories that have made them who they are. My guest today is a writer, producer, director, actor and musician. You might know him as the lead singer of the indie rock band Volcano, I'm Still Excited, or as one half of the Duplass Brothers, the creative powerhouses behind incredible indie movies such as the Puffy Chair, Safety Not Guaranteed, and The One I Love. Or perhaps you know him from his Golden Globe and Emmy-nominated turn on the Apple TV hit series The Morning Show. In the whole time that I hosted The Late Late Show, he really became a guest I would always look forward to when I saw his name on the wall. I'm really excited to spend this time with him. Are you ready?
No, but I'm Mark Duplass, and welcome to This Life of Mine.
You're the first guest to say no. That's a wonderful, wonderful way to do it. How are you?
I'm medium plus. How are you?
I'll take that. Yeah, I'd say a medium plus too.
Yeah.
I'll give you a compliment. I think I was medium plus before you walked in, and now I'd say I'm plus.
Oh!
Honestly, I'm actually quite shocked at how thrilled I am to see you because we don't know each other that well.
We don't know each other that well.
But I always feel like every time you used to come by the show, we'd have these lovely chats before the show. And I can remember thinking, if only we could just do the show in here and not go out in front of these 200 people.
I did feel that, genuinely. I mean, it's an overused term, but I think kindred spirit is what I felt.
Yeah.
You know, I felt that, if I may offer a series of projections,
Sure.
I felt that you felt so grateful to be able to do what you were able to do, but it cost you so much. And when you walked into my dressing room smiling and I gave you that smile, there was this equal sense of so grateful, so happy to be here. Isn't this exhausting and difficult somehow?
That was my feeling a lot of the days that I was doing that show. It's like, oh, this is a great adventure. It can't be the final destination.
Yes.
It can't, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you, firstly, for finding the time to be here, because I know that you're filming season 4 of The Morning Show at the moment, which might have maybe the greatest cast list of anything that's being made right now.
Well, it did, but then we added Marion Cotillard and Jeremy Irons and ruined it. So, you know.
Don't they always ruin everything, those two?
All they want to do is just cast these young social media stars, you know? It's like, where are the actors? Where are the people who can actually do the work?
Yeah. But Jeremy Irons as an influencer have you tried his new hydration drink? It's unbelievable.
I mean,
Iron Fire?
I don't feel a day over 75, let me tell you what.
Well, I wanted to kick off with just a little quick game, because in the cast of The Morning Show, you've got Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, Steve Carell, Billy Crudup, and John Hamm. So in a slight change of format, I'm going to start with a quick fire, okay?
Ready.
Which of those would you pick for the following task? So who would you trust out of those to look after your unlocked phone?
I think it's Billy Crudup, because Billy is pretty much an actual Luddite. Like, he doesn't really know how to work those things.
Right.
So, and while he's a trustworthy person, more than anything, he just wouldn't know how to do it. So.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Who out of those would you form a band with?
I'd go Steve Carell,
Nice.
because I know he can sing, and he's surprisingly kind of jacked and ripped.
Yeah, I
so
can
I think
see that.
he's the guy that's on stage.
Like Imagine Dragons.
Well, it's just like, you know, you're in the middle of that second chorus and you need a little bit of a boost, and he just rips off that shirt, and we're like, oh, I didn't know.
Which of those would you trust to pick up your parents from the airport?
That's Reese.
Who would you go on a road trip with?
That would be Jen.
Good road trip buddy, Jennifer Aniston.
You know, she is a mega international movie star, and I would love to find those 7 or 8 small towns where nobody gives a shit who she is or might not even recognize her. That'd be fun.
And who would you trust to write and deliver your eulogy?
Well, I'm supposed to say John Hamm because he's the last one left, but I don't really want that because then all you have is the person who's like 20% more eloquent, charming, and handsome than me delivering my eulogy.
You're right. You don't want people going, it's not all bad. He's still here.
Still got ham.
Yeah.
But I'll take him. I think we'll pull it off.
So we've asked you to pick a person, a possession, a place, a memory, a movie, and a piece of music. And we're going to start with your person, as they are so intrinsic to your story. Tell us the person you've chosen to talk about on the show today.
Yeah, so the person I picked, probably won't be a surprise, is my brother Jay. Jay is 3.5 years older than me. And the beginning of what made our relationship interesting, in my opinion, is that growing up in Louisiana, Southern boys, you were basically a social outcast if you wanted anything to do with your younger sibling, particularly your younger brother. What you're supposed to do is beat the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And Jay is just not that way. He was intensely kind, and he sort of became my god. His inclusion of me is, I think, the most important element to who I am today in terms of getting the Cure record when I was 8 years old, seeing that movie when I was 10 that I shouldn't have seen, because I got to be 4 years downstream. And then what was really interesting is somewhere around the time Jay turned 18, I was 14, we had a very close-knit family. And he went away to college. He went to the University of Texas in Austin. And he was really not prepared to be out on his own. And part of why Jay and I were closer is I was a little bit mature for my age. He was a little bit younger for his age. We almost kind of met in the middle. And he had a really, really tough time in college and kind of lost himself a little bit. And I was watching my God fumble. And what do you do at that moment, And all I could think to do is, well, I'm just going to have to do for him what he has always done for me. I'm going to try and be the strength and be the pillar. So at 14, I would get these cheap Southwest Airlines flights like every few weeks. I would fly out on CJ on the weekends.
Wow.
And we started to build this new element of our relationship where something in my ignorant confidence of a 14-year-old was the perfect recipe for the kid at 18 who was starting to realize the world is scary and I may not be as special as I thought I was in it. And then I went to college at 18, joined Jay there. And from that moment, that dynamic where either Jay was in the lead or I was in the lead kind of equaled out and we became this force together. And I think part of it was because we went to this kind of pressure cooker high school, it was a Jesuit school in New Orleans. All of our friends were pre-med and business, and they got out of school and they were making like $200,000 a year. And Jay and I were just these like fumbling artists in Austin. I used to edit a church television show at night to make money. We ran a little editing business at the time, editing crappy movies for $10 an hour. Splitting a 2-bedroom apartment for $600 a month, just barely kind of getting by. And we bandied up together. We had to just like figure the whole process out on our own. And it inextricably linked us. And we stayed that way until we met our wives. And then things got really complicated.
It's so amazing to hear somebody talk about a sibling in that way, because I do think siblings is the most unique relationship on earth.
100%.
Really. So we got in touch with Jay and we told him that you had picked him as the person you wanted to talk about, and he actually sent us a message to play for you.
This is incredible.
And we'll talk about the message after you listen to it right here.
Is this the moment in Grizzly Man when Werner Herzog puts on the headphones and listens to the murder and he says, no one should ever listen to this? Okay.
Hello, James and Mark. This is your friend and brother, Jay Duplass. The following is a coded message. Dear Duplass Face Johnson, it's probably okay. But if it's ever not, just call me and I'll meet you under the bridge in an unmarked white van. We will use code names and we will make it okay together. That's the message. I leave that to you, Mark, to decode for James, and I challenge you to do it without crying. I love you.
Okay. So Jay and I, whenever we get ourselves into a pickle, the first response is not, it's going to be okay, I love you. It is an image of a white van with no windows. And that is reflective of the fact of our love is deep and we're very sensitive brothers. But if you need me to kill somebody for you and drag them away in a white van, I will do that. I am here for you. I will meet you under that bridge at any moment in time with the white van with some rope, $350 in cash, and a shovel if required. And I think it's indicative of that, again, that mentality. We must do whatever we have to do. And no matter what happens, you don't have to say anything. I have your back.
You wrote a book together called Like Brothers. One of the first chapters is titled The Woog, which is a name you've both given to anxiety and depression, which I remember thinking that's a very bold way for your first chapter of the book. Why did you decide to start the book with a subject like that? And can we talk about that subject for a little bit?
Absolutely, yes. I love talking about it. We wanted to kick it off with that banger pop song, if you will.
Sure.
And part of the reason for that is that, you know, when you're making art, I think that there's kind of two ways to go about it. You're like, all right, this is what I'm good at. This is what's connecting with audiences. And so I'm just going to continue to do that. And if I continue to do that, everything's going to be okay. And that can work. But at a certain point, you're going to start getting into a formula. You're going to start repeating yourself and you're going to get the yips. And you're going to do what a lot of our favorite artists do in their mid-40s is just start making really bad, repetitive, almost mocks of what you used to be good at, you know? Yeah. Or you can wake up and be honest with yourself and say, this is what I uniquely have to offer this morning. And so at the time I was writing that book, I was definitely feeling like, okay, if two white brothers in their late 30s are going to talk about their history and their feelings, what makes this unique in this book beyond all the other books that are out there on everybody's lists to read? And what I hadn't seen at that time was people who are in relative positions of power or any position that people might think they want to be in. James Corden, he's got this incredible life. He's hosting this show. Mark Duplass is like on an Apple TV show and he's the head of the mumblecore movement. Like, I needed to show them that, like, sometimes I can't get out of bed in a way that hopefully made it feel like these amazing things they have achieved. Well, if this is coming from a guy who doesn't have the greatest vocabulary in the world and can barely get out of bed some days, a relative B- human being, like, I can do this too.
Particularly amongst men, I think we are not brought up to share and talk about your feelings.
I grew up in Louisiana, man. I mean, it was like, you just don't do that. So it took me a while to come around. I didn't, start going to therapy until I was in my late 20s. I look back at myself and I can see myself in my early 20s driving myself so hard, pushing through the depression, pushing through the anxiety, and my body was starting to cripple. I had these like carpal tunnel and repetitive stress injuries. I couldn't even play music anymore. And I look back and I'm just like, oh God, I wish somebody had just put their hand on my shoulder and been like, I think what's happening here is you need to go see someone.
I also think sometimes those things, because look, both of us, there is a huge amount of privileged and certainly for me, like, lucky things have landed in a good way. And so part of you thinks that when you push through those things enough and things are professionally in your life going okay, you start to on some level go, oh, well, it's because of that. Actually, it's because I'm able to push those things down and going, well, actually, I need to push against those anxiety attacks, those rises in the chest tightening. Look what happened because of that.
Particularly for you who had to get up every day and do that show with that smile. I mean, I had a little more flexibility, honestly. Like, there were days, like, I'll shoot the morning show for a while, but then I have days off in between and I can take my down days and I can say, you know what, today's going to be an incubator day. I mean, you had to get up every day, and I don't know how you did that.
Honestly, the show bit is easy.
Yeah.
The show bit's easy. Because also, I think, because I'd done plays, the discipline of doing a play 8 times a week.
Yep.
It's your half-hour call, you put on your costume, You get ready, you step out, and it's a performance.
And you're James Corden, but you're a performance of James Corden.
It's not you in any way.
Yes.
It's just this thing that you've built.
Yep.
Where it's hard is the expectation of that in every single situation of your life. You are that person. I've had people walk past me in a coffee shop and go, "Oh, cheer up, mate."
Yeah.
And I think, my face is doing exactly the same thing yours is. We're both waiting for just because I'm not going, "A latte? Oh,
Yeah.
oat milk? What even is it with oat milk? It's not even milk."
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be calling it nut juice?
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Yep.
It's really weird.
Yeah. I know it. I know it.
Let's move on to your film. Tell us the movie you've chosen as being important in your life.
All right. The film I chose is Raising Arizona. It's 1987. I'm 10 years old. My brother's 14. My parents are about my age now. We are in the Lakeside Cinema in Metairie, Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. And we are a movie family. This is our church. You know, we go to movies together, you know. I don't know anything about the Coen brothers. I don't know anything about independent film. I don't know anything about auteurs. I just like 90 minutes of entertaining stuff coming across my eyeballs at this point. And if you remember the beginning of that movie, there's this wonderful 10-minute montage that opens the film, going in and out of dialogue with the great score. They condensed the whole first act of the movie into 10 minutes so that they could make it work.
Now y'all without sin can cast the first stone. But we thought it was unfair that some should have so many while others should have so few. With the benefit of hindsight, maybe it wasn't such a hot idea. But at the time, Ezra's plan seemed like the solution to all our problems and the answer to all our prayers.
And then there's that wonderful shot. There's a ladder leading up to the baby's rooms that they're going to kidnap. And the camera runs up to the ladder and then runs all the way up the ladder and goes into the room. It was like a lightning bolt went off in my body, and something in my brain said, a person made this thing that I'm watching. I felt the architect behind it, and I could see off screen the little bodies running up the other ladders on the side to make it work. And I was like, could I be one of those people who makes these magical things? So it was a smack, you know. And Jay and I are talking about Raising Arizona, and we're talking about, you know, God, this is kind of amazing. And then we find out it's two brothers who made this movie. So at that point, we're fucked, basically. We're totally hooked in. Cut to last year, we've helped open a video store and movie theater called Video. It's on the east side of LA. And they have a 270-seat theater, and they show old movies, and they're screen Raising Arizona. So I get to go to the theater. Jay was out of town, but I go with my wife and my parents, who live here with me now. And I'm sitting next to my dad, and the movie ends, and there's that incredibly emotional moment, and he reaches over and he grabs my hand, and I hold his hand, and he looks at me, and I realize, oh yes, I am the same age now as when we first watched this movie together, and he held my hand in this movie about 38 years ago, and we cry together. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to have a movie that was able to span that many years for me and give me that wonderful bookend.
Have you and Jay, have you spent any time with the Coen brothers? Have you managed to ever do that thing of going, look at us and look at you? I
specifically have not met the Coen brothers.
What do you mean specifically?
And specifically it's not like they're beating down my door to hang out with me.
Sure.
But we've had moments where we've been at the same festival and I easily could have accessed them. And it's not a don't meet your heroes thing because they might be assholes. It is certain things in life are so good and they're so perfect, and I don't want to mess with them. I don't know if you've ever had this moment, but you know, I was a musician and I used to go to so many shows, and every now and then I'd be in the middle of a show of one of my favorite bands, and would be at song 7, and I knew there was 6 more songs coming, but it would end so perfectly on that song, I would leave early because I was wow, I don't want to sully this with anything that might happen.
Really?
It's like the cut your losses guy at the poker table. I'm just the Coen brothers are mythically perfect in my mind, and that is where I want them to stay. And I also feel, too, that in that meeting, inherently, I would probably want more from them than they would want from me, and I would never put them in the position of having to.
Well, that makes sense to me.
Here's the little indie boys, and I got to take care of them and do the thing. I don't want to put anybody in that spot.
That makes sense to me. I do understand that.
Yeah.
The only reason we're talking about this is because you're all brothers.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
You weren't going, I mean, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
Okay, like,
yeah.
it just, like,
Nope.
it's literally that.
Bros,
yeah, I get
yeah.
that. I do understand.
Yeah.
Let's move on to your place. Tell us
Yes.
the place that you've chosen for the show today.
I chose my childhood home on Chateau Drive in the suburbs of New Orleans in a little place called Metairie. I lived there until I was 18, and it was intensely formative as to who I am. At once, it was cozy, quiet, extremely safe, that lovely 80s upbringing where you could hop on your bike. You know, my parents thought I was around the corner. I was 10 miles away, just like near death.
In an abandoned house.
100%. near death at all times. And developing that wonderful sense of confidence that comes with getting myself into trouble, not having the ability to text my parents to get me out of it, having to try to figure it out myself. All the problem-solving skills that prepared me for my life in independent filmmaking and gave me the confidence to say, I can jump in and figure this out. I've been doing this my whole life. It also provided boredom for me, which was so critical to me as a child.
Necessary.
My parents, very close with them, love them, emotionally supportive, spiritually supportive, but literally gave us nothing. And we were middle class. We had enough money to like, Mom, I want to buy a keyboard so I can learn music. No, like you're just going to have to figure this out. And so everything I did, I had to fight tooth and nail for to get access to. So when I got it, I was so appreciative of it. And before I would get those things, my father was at work and my mother was a teacher for some of that time. And there was just nothing to do. So my mind would just spin.
Yeah.
That's where my creative life and my complex inner life came to me. So that was really important. And then I think the one unique thing that I got, being at once deeply safe and comfortable, tucked away in the suburbs, and 12 minutes away was the most dangerous, culturally rich place you could possibly imagine in like Uptown, Midtown, and in the French Quarter in New Orleans. So I had the ability to go where I needed to go depending on what I needed. There were certain times where I was just like, I can't handle it. The world is scary. I'm just going to stay at home with my notebook and create a story and get 10 hours of sleep and I'm good. Here are my suburbs. Or when I felt like, here we go. Like, let's steal Dad's car. Let's go see Rebirth Brass Band playing Uptown until 2 in the morning and like feel what this feels. But that dichotomy of living the danger and the safety at once was so formative to me. I don't know how you feel as a parent. I'm constantly trying to think of ways to sort of like engineer this a little bit for my children so they can have moments where they feel like, without actually putting them in too much danger, they are in a little bit of peril and they're trying to figure it out on their own, you know, but also give them the safety and the comfort they need. And it's exhausting trying to figure that out.
Well, that's a whole other. I feel like you and I could do an entire parenting podcast.
Yes.
But talking about your childhood home, and I wanted to talk to you about something that I actually didn't know that you did, and I'm kind of fascinated by it, is you recently took the decision to sell your home that you were living in and very purposefully sort of downsize that home to live a different sort of financial existence. Is this right? Am I explaining this in the right way?
Yeah, basically. There was a moment where my wife and I were on this show, The League, this fantasy football show for years, and we both came from middle-class backgrounds, and we didn't have the kind of money that we're experiencing now, so we were just like, didn't really know what to do and how to manage it. We found ourselves like moving up a class and kind of confused by it. You know,
Yeah.
we can afford the big house. Shouldn't we get the big house?
Yeah.
If you can, you should get the big house, you know? And we got the big house. And honestly, it was lovely. And it was really, really fun. And then the pandemic hit and we saw everybody around us struggling. And the big house started to feel a little icky on that front. And then we noticed that like, we only hang out in a collective 700 square feet of this 6,000 square foot house, you know? And it just started to not feel good, honestly. And it started to not feel us. So my wife and I had a heart to heart and we're just like, what does it mean if we sell the big house and just move into the smaller 3-bedroom house with our kids where we want to be. And so we did. So we had this really brilliant idea at the time. We'll sell the house off and we'll buy this much cheaper house out in the valley. It'll be near the kids' schools, a little more community oriented. And then whatever profit exists between the big house and the little house, we'll start this foundation with, and then we'll be able to sort of fund projects in a place that, could maybe be more helpful than just an extra 5,200 square feet that we don't use, So that's what we did.
It's such a brilliant thing to do.
It was fun.
Do you feel a greater sense of freedom creatively because of those decisions?
100%. So here's a couple of things that have happened because of those decisions. One, you look at a move like that we made, and there are examples of that all over. I don't fly first class. And then we have this wonderful moments when we fly where my children and my wife and I, we're heading to the back of the plane, and all these people are staring at me like, what the fuck is the guy from the morning show doing sitting in seat 28B? And it just feels weird. But I just don't want to set a precedent that is a place we're going to spend money. Now, I'm not going to say I'm Mr. Honorable, because when Apple wants to fly me first class to New York to do press, I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Sure.
But when I'm paying for this and when I'm showing my children what our values are, I just show them. I said, look, we can fly to New York for $500 or we can fly for $2,500 in first class. Is that $2,000 for each of us for a collective $8,000 on this 5-hour flight worth it? Or should we take that and should we move these foster children into their new home and pay for all their furniture, And it's a little manipulative, I admit, but I want my kids to be thinking that way. I think we should, So
this
that
is making
to me
feel awful.
That to me is easy. Now, here's what my wife tells me, and my dad and all my friends tell me. Say, Mark, you can do both. You have enough money to fly first class and do that thing. And I get it, but there's a little something sticky morally in me, and I'm getting to the bottom of this with my therapist, and it's possible that some of this is related to, do I feel I don't deserve it? Maybe. I'm not like Mr. Perfect and Mr. Generous. I'm not giving away everything I make. I still have a stockpile of cash, and I'm saving that for a rainy day. And the rainy day has come in our business where they're not making the kinds of TV shows that I value anymore, and they're not making the kinds of independent films that I value anymore. So I pay for a lot of my own things. I made a show for Netflix called Penelope about a young girl who runs off to live in the woods. And I was like, this is an important show. This is a show about a 16-year-old girl where there's not a phone in sight, where it's about living through danger and autonomy and figuring out who you are. And there's very little dialogue in it, and no one would make this show for me. And because I don't fly first class and because I live a certain way, we made it all on our own. And it was so fucking terrifying. But it was worth it because I wanted to sell it to Netflix because they have so many viewers. They wouldn't buy it for me on the scripts. But when it was done, I took it back and they bought it from me. And we charted in the top 10. And I got this show in front of the girls that I want to get it in front of. And that, to me, has been a huge benefit to my creative life it's allowed me to kind of be my own studio in a certain way.
Let's move on to your memory.
Yes.
Tell us the memory that you selected for the show today.
Okay. So the memory I've chosen is horseback riding. I'm not a horseback rider. I do not like it. I was 8 years old.
Because you really feel like one.
Yeah. I have that equestrian thespian thing going. Okay. So I'm 8 years old. I'm on a trip to Santa Fe with my parents. I quickly realize I am allergic to this horse. I am in the far back of a line of about 15 people. And I see my parents and my brother up there having a really nice time. And as my eyes and nose and chest begin to explode and I start to look more and more like Rocky at the end of episode 1, all I can think to myself is, I don't want to ruin their good time. So I'm just going to suffer through this. And we got off the trail and they saw me and my mother gasped and they loaded me up with Benadryl and we had lunch afterwards. And they said, why didn't you tell us, And it was obvious to me that anyone would have done the same thing, which is, why would I ruin your good time? But that memory keeps coming up over and over again for me, and it comes up in therapy, and I'm talking about it a lot. So this is a little raw for me and a little unexamined, so I'm not quite going to be able to speak eloquently about it. But what I'm figuring out with this memory is that there seems to be a fine line between being thoughtful about someone's feelings, showing up to meet someone where they're at as opposed to trying to bring them to where you are, which is relatively healthy, and being a people pleaser who completely ignores your needs and suffers greatly because of that. And that is, as good a metaphorical example as there can be. And as I look at that, I look around at my life, and I don't know if this resonates with you at all, because you're very good with people. You can connect with anyone. I think that's what made you such a good host. And I'm pretty good at that too. But I'm starting to realize there may have been a little cost for me in the shape shifting that I have done through the years in order to achieve this. And it's hard for me to regret it because it gained me things. There was an untruthfulness to it and a stomaching of a lot of things that I don't think was healthy for me. And I think I need to look at.
I mean, yeah, it's just such a strange thing to realize is what I find.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's not a feeling of like regret.
Yeah.
It's not like, I made this awful mistake. Do you know what I mean? It's not that, because you've got those feelings. You know what that is? I see it in me all the time. My wife will look at me and be like, you don't need to. Like, there's going an extra mile.
Yeah.
And then there's like running an extra marathon.
Yeah.
I'm just terrible at even being able to like say no.
It's complicated.
To stuff.
There's certain people you feel them socially when, you're at a dinner party, you're like, this person is actively not fitting into this conversation. They are either not on the right rhythm. And when I get into a dinner party, what I do is I'm like a computer.
Yeah.
I assess the rhythm.
Scanning
and,
all of it.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out boop, 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 boop. Here's the assimilation. Here's the version of Mark Duplass who shows up tonight.
Oh, in a dinner party, that's me in a cab.
Yeah.
My accent changes if I'm talking to a cab driver in London. I'm like, God, what about the weather, eh? Anything to just make you feel like...
this is good. Yeah. And I think that we probably shouldn't try to diagnose it right now, but I think we need to meet at this table in 6 months and see if we can figure out what the fuck is wrong with us.
Let's move on to your possession.
Yes.
Tell us the possession you've chosen.
Okay, so I have chosen a little bit of a cheat for my possession. It was my 1991 Dodge conversion van. I no longer have this possession physically.
That's okay.
But let me tell you this. I dream about it 5 times a week, minimum. That I've lost the van. Oh my God, I found my van. It would have been parked around the corner this whole time. It's been there, and I go back in it.
And why is this van so important?
So when I was 20 years old, I was a musician. I decided I was going to record my own record, and I was going to book my own U.S. tour because, no record labels were coming for me. It was that same brazen confidence that I had from living through danger as a child. And what I did was I sold my car and I bought this used conversion van from this sweet older couple. The van was 9 years old, but had like 800 miles on it because they never drove it. And I pressed 1,000 CDs. And man, this was a time when like booking tours was not like, email me an MP3 of your song. I would have to mail a CD to this address, wait a week for it to get there, call them, try to get them to answer. I killed myself with a lot of people pleasing on those phone calls, by the way.
I bet.
But I did it, and I pulled it off, and I gave up my apartment, and I moved into this van, and I lived in this van for 3.5 months. And it was, I think it's probably the singular most formative experience of my life. First of all, just the autonomy of no Google Maps, no nothing. I had a fold-out map to figure out how to get across the country. It gave me so much confidence to feel like I could do this. And every night I would either sleep in the van. I had little shades that I could pull over my windows, and I would fold up my mattress, and I would pull into a Walmart or a Target parking lot because they were still pretty well lit, and you wouldn't get into too much trouble. Or if I was lucky, what I would do when I was at a show is I would say, hey, I'm on tour, I'm living out of my van. If anybody wants a CD, they're $10. If you don't have money, I'll give you a free CD if you let me stay at your house. Because I just felt, this was 1997, 1998, it was a little bit of a different time, but feel like the average person who's showing up to a coffee singer-songwriter venue is like probably pretty safe. You know, it was like we were all Indigo girls. You know, it was fine. And so I would go and spend nights with these incredible people that I never would have hung out with, you know, and you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes someone is like dressed in a way that you're like, oh, I don't know what this is going to be. You go back and it's this massive 4-bedroom house. They cook me this beautiful breakfast and send me on my way. Sometimes you end up in a trailer park with 9 kittens, you know, and that's just what it is. But what happened to me in that van is that I became really, really quiet. I had no cell phone, no device. All I had were my journal, my books, some CDs. And because I was booking my own tour and I wasn't popular, I had quite a few days off. Sure. And so I would sometimes go 3 to 4 days without speaking to anyone. And I realize now how much I miss that for myself developmentally, how good it was for me as a person, because I don't know where you're at right now, but like I cannot sit comfortably for more than 7 seconds without pulling out my phone to get rid of the discomfort and engage myself with something. But I think back constantly, and I think that's why I keep dreaming about that van, is I just want to get back into that van and into that place of inner complexity and quiet. And the only place I can really achieve it now is I go out on these big backpacking and hiking trips where there's no cell phone service and you kind of approximate that feeling of solitude. But it was such a beautiful developmental portion of my life.
When did you choose to go, okay, I'm going to really focus now on film and TV?
Music really was my first love, and I identified as a musician for so long, and then I'll work as a film editor and make some money, and I kind of want to make movies. That could be really fun too, but I am a musician. I really was. And then something started to occur to me. I started having a lot of physical pains, and I couldn't play guitar the way I wanted to, so I had to switch instruments. And it felt like something was telling me that I'm beating my head against a door that doesn't want me there. And when I look back on it now, I think I was realizing that I actually wasn't good enough at it to be able to express the things I wanted to express. And I was way too honest with myself to lie to myself and say, oh, I'm a great musician. I don't know why I'm not getting record deals. I knew I just wasn't good enough. And it was starting to kill me. And I think that subconsciously I was starting to say, is there a pivot here? I've got my leg in this film business. And then once I started to actively getting involved in making movies, something really weird happened, which is even though it wasn't my first love, I was excellent at it. And so I found myself flourishing wildly, but in my second love. And it was really hard because a part of me felt like, what are you doing? Are you selling out on your first love because you're not going to be so successful?
And everybody goes, oh, just don't quit. Just keep going.
Yeah.
You know.
Is that what you're doing? Is that what you're doing? Or are you buying in and are you being smart and thoughtful and curative about your life? And so I really sat with it, and film from a lifestyle standpoint was going to be very good for me, really well suited to being able to be home, being able to raise kids. I also realized something else with music, which is music is tough because you still got to play those songs from 30 years ago up on stage, no matter who you are now. Sure. But you make a movie, you don't have to play it live 15 years later when you don't feel like that person anymore. You get to open and shut that thing and become someone new.
Yeah.
And so all of those little logistical elements, it was like in the pros and cons list, I started to realize like, this is probably where I should go. And then I had a really funny moment. I just made our first movie, The Puffy Chair. I just finished shooting it. And the day I finished, I had to get on a bus from Maine to New York, get with my band, rehearse, and fly to Europe for 7 weeks to go on tour with the band. And I just didn't want to go on that tour. And I was staying at my sister-in-law's house, and she has this beautiful collection of books. For some reason, I pulled out The Bridges of Madison County was my choice.
Right.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
Let me read The Bridges of Madison County. Sometimes you pick the book that you need. And I was thinking like, God, am I not a musician anymore? Are you sure about this? Is this what you're doing? Because I knew The Puffy Chair was going to be good, and I felt like I could take a step in that direction. And then I read that very on the nose, very melodramatic line from the book. This type of certainty comes but once in a lifetime. And right next to the poor old lady who had no idea who she was sitting next to, I proceeded to sob. I mean, 2 hours straight, just the purging of this identity that I had. She was very patient with me and very sweet. And I got it all out. And then I got home and I looked the band members in the eyes and I said, this is going to be our last tour. I'm quitting the band. That was a real comfortable tour. Talk about that one later. And I never looked back.
I mean, look, you mentioned the Puffy Chair there, which really, your song choice relates.
It does.
To that movie. Tell us the song and the piece of music that you've chosen for the show.
So the song I chose is a song called Transatlanticism by Death Cab for Cutie. Came out in 2003. This was the year after I met my wife. This was the band we were listening to and road tripping together. Death Cab, they didn't go to college. They went right into making art, and they really got a jump on everything. And I really looked up to them and what they were able to do from their creative process. By the time they got to this record, they had quite a few records already, and they were
this is their fourth album.
Yeah,
right?
they're starting to peak, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, God, if I could only get to myself to a place as an artist, whether it's music or film or anything, where they're at, they were just a little beacon. Then a year after that, I wrote The Puffy Chair, and I said, this would be great. We can make this movie cheaply. And we're editing the movie. We made it for $10,000. We have no money, and we have a big montage in there. And of course, I can't help myself. We're editing it along to Transatlanticism. And at this point, Death Cab for Cutie is fully blown up. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to replace this song eventually because it's going to be too expensive.
They're never going to clear it.
Never going to clear it. How we're going to do this. I didn't know those guys at all, but I wrote a letter to them through their manager, cold. Didn't hear back. And then I had found a replacement song, which I'd convinced myself was good, and it wasn't even close. And then finally I got a call from the manager, and he said, the guys like the movie. And I said, okay, so, here's the situation. We are a $10,000 movie. I have no money. I can offer you some back end if we sell it, but who the hell knows what that's going to be, And he said, no, they don't care. They're going to give it to you. They're going to let you have this. And I've never forgotten the feeling in my body at that moment. And it was one of the greatest lessons I learned, because as artists or as business people, as anything, we spend most of our time looking up to the people who are one step ahead of us and reaching up and asking them to grab our hand and to pull us up to them. And Death Cab had nothing to gain by giving one of their marquee songs to a $10,000 movie from some kid in a bad indie rock band making his first film, except to be kind, and they knew it would make my world. And they gave it to me, and luckily the movie became the little modest cult hit. And I became friendly with the manager, who was so sweet to me. And I moved out of New York and out of my cheap apartment in Brooklyn and began my big life as a Hollywood producer, filmmaker, and whatnot. Cut to, it's 10 years later. My wife and I are in New York. We go back every year for her birthday. And we always try to do something surprising and different, in a different restaurant, something we've never done before. And we're looking around what's going on, and we say, wait, Death Cab for Cutie is playing in Philadelphia tonight. How far is the train to Philadelphia? What is that? So we get on the train, we go down there. I texting the manager, I hope it's his same number. He's like, oh my God, yeah, Mark, that's you. Yeah, I'll get you some tickets. Come on in. The guys are backstage. Come meet the band. I don't want to meet the band. I don't want to do it. It's nervous, But I go and meet them. They're very, very sweet. Get to look them in the eye and tell them what they meant to me, and tell them, how they reached down to help me, and how I have modeled my career in this way. I don't spend any more time looking up and asking for help. I look to who's right down below me, and I try to bring them up to me. And I learned that from them. And so we sat in our seats, and 2,000 people in this Philly audience. And Transatlanticism is not only so important to my film career, but it is a song that my wife and I had at our wedding, and we're hoping they're going to play it. And of course they don't, and they get on stage, and then they come back for their encore, and he sits down and he says, this one's for Mark and Katie. And I had this feeling that he might do that. And so I surreptitiously pulled out my phone just in the event that this would happen. And I don't have him saying it, but I have my wife watching him while he says it. And it really was one of those beautiful full circle moments, like Raising Arizona, like the things I've had with my brother, like dreaming of my van. My life has had this way of bringing these things back to me and that I'm very grateful for. And that was definitely a big example of it.
Mark Duplass, your person is your brother Jay. Your movie is Raising Arizona. Your place is your childhood home. Your memory is a horseback ride at 8 years old. Your possession is your 1991 Dodge conversion van. And your piece of music is Transatlanticism by Death Cab for Cutie. I could talk to you till next year and never get bored. Thank you so much for sharing this life of yours.
Thanks, James.
Up next is this.
I'm Jay Shetty. Welcome to This Life of Mine. I was 16 years old and I got a microphone tattooed on my neck because to me, I wanted to have my whole upper body tattooed like every hip hop artist. And I was told the neck was the hardest point because that's where you feel the most pain. So I thought to myself, if I can start where I feel the most pain, I'll be able to finish the rest of my upper body. The problem is I stopped after that one. It was so hard, right near your collarbone. I'd encourage everyone to listen to This Life of Mine to deeply understand their own memory, their favorite place, their favorite possession, their favorite music, movie, and person. If we don't answer those questions, we don't start the journey of self-awareness. You're actually realigning you with a relationship with your own mind, body, and heart. And then you can fill your life with more of those things rather than filling your life with everything else that everyone else is telling you to fill them with.
I mean, who knew? I'm sort of a spiritual guru.
You're a philosopher, James.
If you haven't subscribed to Lemonada Premium yet, now is the perfect time. You can listen to This Life of Mine completely ad-free. Plus, you'll unlock exclusive quickfire rounds of questions with all of my guests. They're all in 2 minutes or less. Just tap that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or head to lemonadapremium.com to subscribe on any other app. Or you can listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. That's lemonadapremium.com. Don't miss out.